Hello, everyone. A big welcome to this unnamed podcast. This is the third episode of a music discussion podcast I am excited to start up. My name is Adel. I am a music nerd. I love keeping up with new releases and listening to the vast amount of music we now have access to thanks to streaming and vinyl resurgence. I am a passionate listener / beginner producer who is ready to put this idea of a podcast into action. For the past couple of years, I have sat on the thought on finding a platform to discuss music to an audience. I never really wanted to do this by myself. I love musical discourse, and I really get my inspiration from YouTube channels like Dead and Hip Hop, who use the format of a group discussion to talk about music. The idea of this unnamed podcast is to grab friends and other fellows in the future to cover an album with me. The people I will talk to will be of different listening backgrounds and habits. I love hearing people's different opinions on music, even if it's not quote-unquote critical or well-analyzed. In this particular podcast, I'm really just wanting the human emotion and the reflection of the music that we're listening to. Nothing too complex, just a direct response to what we just heard. So pretty much, I will be discussing today's ep with a friend of mine, Alan Higgs. We went to uni together, and we also have done a couple of podcasts with our friend Sam and AT. Please introduce yourself, my man.
Thanks for having me. As you said, I'm Alan. I'm just another Aucklander, really. That's the best way to describe myself at this point.
Fantastic. Can you just describe like you as a music listener? How do you kind of like answer to people when they ask you, "Oh, what kind of music do you listen to?"
That's a big question, and I'd say these days what I listen to mostly, like genre-wise, is normally like female singer-songwriters is what I generally end up gravitating to, not really consciously, but it's what I do. And then mostly like any alternative rock album that catches my eye, that'll be what I put on. And normally I used to listen to any album that would come out, anything that I saw was trending. Nowadays it's if I see an artist that I like has dropped an album or something that's connected to them, I'll listen to it, but I'm not normally going out of my way to listen to every release.
Why do you feel like that's changed from, always just keeping up to new releases, which I'm doing right now and I love it, to just being like, do you think it's you not being bothered, or do you think there's just a change in music that you're kind of just like, I'm not that excited to see what's coming up?
No, I don't think it's the trend of the music. I think it's more, so I'd listen to an album and I'd listen to it once, I'd listen to every new album, listen to J. Cole's new album, whatever, and listen to it once. And you don't really get to appreciate it if you listen to it once. Whereas now, if Deaf Heaven releases a new album, I'll listen to it 3 times, or 5 times, whatever. That's the way I prefer to actually get to dive into it and experience
Fantastic. So it actually gives you like a clear opinion on an album rather than just, hearing something once and basing your opinion on that and having to share your opinion to other people.
Yeah, you can't really speak on it properly.
Exactly,
you won't even remember half the tracks. Yeah.
So like every single album I talk to you about is just like, it's trash. I only heard it once, it's trash.
Exactly. If I only listen to it once these days, it's because I don't like it.
So what are like some of your favorite artists? If you could name maybe like a big 3 or like favorite artist now, favorite artist back then, however you want to do it.
So my favorite artist now, I still can't look past Kanye, the man Kanye.
Me too.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Growing up, I was big into stuff like Rage Against the Machine and Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
And also I do listen to more fringe stuff, like as I mentioned earlier, Deaf Heaven is probably my favorite current alternative act. Yeah.
Do you feel like because they've had quite a long career, Deaf Haven, or
probably nearing 10 years at this point?
Nearing 10 years? Yeah. And what would you say is like your favorite album from them?
Oh, Sunbather is like it's up there in the albums of the decade.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And you don't feel like they're declining like some other people might be thinking?
No. The album last year was beautiful. It was more like noise rock.
Because they're changing the sound a little bit, eh?
Yeah, it became a bit more like Godspeed You Black Emperor kind of style.
Oh,
a bit more sparse. But I loved it.
Fantastic. So in today's episode, me and Alan will be discussing folk rock singer-songwriter Richard Dawson's and his new album 2020, which released back in, I believe, the 11th of October. Did you do any research much on this guy?
No, I intentionally didn't.
Yeah?
I intentionally wanted to know as little as possible.
How about after?
The only thing I Googled is where he's from. If you listen to the album, his accent is very notable, so I had to figure out where it was from.
Do you kind of match his accent with any other kind of singers? I know it sounds kind of cliche, but every time I hear his voice, I think of like Peter Gabriel.
No, the voice for me, like, it struck me as like Neutral Milk Hotel. That's what
Really?
I got from it. Like, not accent wise, but like the way
The way he sings.
yeah, those really like high falsettos, I guess you'd call them. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Because like, I've listened to two albums from him. I've listened to this album and I've listened to Peasant back when it came out. I know he's from England. Apparently his age was a mystery for a long time until it finally got published on, I think, Wikipedia like 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow, that recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone was like, this guy's probably like, I don't know, 50. Or some people were like, oh, he's 45. He's 38 years old. He looks like he's like a little chubby, like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
he's an old looking dude. He looks like he has a lot of experience and is pretty wise. And I think his look really embodies the kind of music he makes. Yeah, Peasant was like a folky medieval album, which I liked, but I wasn't too crazy over. Maybe I just don't really get the whole medieval thing. I've never been really into folklore in that kind of
Not
sense.
dressing up for the Renaissance fair?
No,
Okay,
I'm not
okay.
LARPing.
Not yet.
But I did really enjoy what he does as a singer-songwriter, the way he tells stories, and he tells stories about different characters, and he never just focuses on one character. It's always like a story about a different character moving on to a different character, and I always thought that was really interesting when he did that on Peasant. Now on this new album, I think it's even more interesting because it now has such a relatable factor that really is its biggest strength, in my opinion. It's the biggest strength of this album is how relatable it is. Like, this is more relatable than a J. Cole song.
Oh, definitely. It's really grounded. Every story to some extent is grounded in everyone else's reality. Like, it's not talking about. It's not a Cash Money Hose album, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And people will say, you know, you mentioned J. Cole. They'll say they're making an album for the culture, and then they're talking about things that no one else can afford. Like, this is the real day struggle.
Exactly. This is so working class.
Yeah,
It's the most
it's the
working
word for
class
it.
thing I've ever heard in my
Yeah,
life, you know?
exactly.
You can tell that this guy has not really lived glamour. And so the stories that he's telling comes from a place that he's probably maybe mildly experienced. And I feel like that's become so true, just the way he tells these stories.
Yeah.
Now, this is very lyric-based, story-based, and that's why I want to ask you, do you find yourself paying more attention to music sonically or the lyrics when it comes to listening to music?
I think it really depends on the type of music. With something like this and singer-songwriter stuff, definitely the lyrics is what I'd gravitate towards more. But if it's like hip-hop or something really loud and noisy, then I can almost just completely ignore the lyrics. But for this, yeah, absolutely the lyrics.
Fantastic, because I'm such a sonic person, so when it comes to sound and music, that's what I pay attention to. My mind just gravitates to that no matter what. This one was completely different. I knew that this is not what I was in for, and even when I tried to just pay attention to the sonics, he would always say something to just grab my ear, and I was like, damn, this is so like lovely and true and dark, and just it revoked so much emotions from me.
It's funny as well. It's a very funny album.
Yeah, and I think that really, and that's another strength to it, is that it actually makes you smile and makes you laugh. Now, be honest, how many times do you think you've listened to this?
In its entirety, I listened to it all the way through twice.
Nice.
But I have listened to some of those tracks multiple times.
Like the favorite tracks? Or?
Yeah, come back to them quite a bit.
Fantastic. Now, how was the listening experience? What kind of environment were you in when you listened to it in full, or listening to your favorite tracks?
So the first time I listened to it, I was on the bus, just on the commute.
I feel like that's the best, because every time I ask people how they listen to this album, it's always, I'm on the bus. And it's such a great way to listen to this album.
Because you don't get bored listening to it. It's like, you can have good albums that still have boring moments. There's no really boring part of this. And the way he's telling his stories on the bus, you're just entertained throughout.
Yeah, and just the bus setting is something that I really hold dear to me when it comes to struggling and going through turmoil or going through different parts of life that's maybe a struggle, you know, going to your 9-to-5 job, everything like that. I kind of take it to the bus. And this album really fits that atmosphere to me because it's always talking about struggles and, you know, different life turns. How do you feel about it? Did you listen to it on the bus on the second turn? Or?
No, the second time I was at home, put it on the speakers, gave it,
Nice.
that kind of listening experience, which I found worked as well. It didn't really change my thoughts on
That's
it.
the best thing to do, though.
Yeah.
Listen to headphones once, listen to the speakers after.
Yeah.
You honestly get a different experience, and that's something I really recommend. Now, so first impression after putting it on for the first time? Like your first impression playing it and then finishing it and being like, okay, cool. This is what this bastard got me listening to.
Your first impression was this guy is funny. I think
Yeah,
this
yeah.
guy is hilarious. But also, I thought like these vocals are ridiculous. Not in a bad way, but like,
Yeah.
they're
No,
like,
I really want to talk about it. Like, how do you feel about his high pitched voice?
I actually I think it works. I think but at some point of the album, it like feels like it's probably had a little bit too much of it. But I do enjoy it. It reminds me of like Phil Alvarum and
A little bit, yeah.
and like Jeff from Neutral Milk Hotel. He does that high thing all the time. And I feel like
I've never listened to Phil Elverum in that sense. I've always just heard his quiet music, you know what I mean? Or the music where he's just kind of like just talking.
have you heard the glow part?
No,
too?
I have never heard the
'cause
microphones. No,
yeah, so
I
that's
haven't.
he really leans into that kind of sound there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think it is a bit jarring and maybe not really a gripe, but it can be a little bit grating sometimes. But I don't think it really removes the enjoyability of it. And going into the first track of the album, Civil Servant, which is why I wanted to mention that high-pitched voice, he uses it a lot on the song. And it's quite an intense song, I feel. Do you have any thoughts on that track?
Well, like sonically, this is one of the songs that like struck me sonically the most because it sounds almost like a sea shanty in a weird way.
It's a real hard rock instrumental, eh?
Yeah. So from there, I was like, well, I don't know what kind of album this is from here, but yeah, as you're saying, this high pitched vocals are all over the place for this song.
Yeah, and it gets even more intense, and those hard rock instrumentals just get really jarring to like a real metallic kind of like sound. And he's just like really, what's the emotion that he's portraying here? He's really just fed up.
He wants to quit his job.
Yeah, he cannot go to work today. He's like, I can't do it.
It's done, it's over, yeah.
So as weird and as unconventional as his high-pitched voice sounds, I think it matches the theme and the environment that he's in right now. Like I can imagine he's in his bed and he's having like a temper tantrum because he can't go to his government job. He wants to kill everyone there, you know? And I relate to that. Not in, like, I've never dreaded a job that much, but I know there has been times when I really just want to call in sick, but I just cannot muster the courage to. I hate the awkwardness. I hate the judgment of the upper management when it comes to calling in sick. It is a real chore. And is there something that you related to when it came to this song?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I've felt those exact feelings.
Yeah.
You wake up and the last thing you want to do is go to work, and then what happens? You go home and then you go to sleep afterwards, and you do the same thing the next day.
Yeah, we're gonna get a little personal here. Like I'm ready to just like use this as my my therapy. And then it goes to the next track, which is an interesting one because I haven't really connected with the story as much as I want to. Even though I absolutely love this tune. I love the hook. It's got such a sing-along feel to it. And I think the way the chorus comes in and it's got this really joyous sing-alongness to it. It really reminds me of like a choir of like people, a choir of a town, which is what the song's about, singing along and having a joyous time, even though they're singing about stuff that's quite sad.
Well, the weird thing I got from it, the thing that made me think of it was like a musical. It sounded almost like
that's what I was thinking
Phantom
about.
of the Opera is what the vibe I got from it. Weirdly,
it's that "How Little We Are" chant. It kind of makes me feel like, this whole town singing along together, kind of thing, And can you decipher the story more to me, because I don't want to get this one wrong, because I feel like this is the more like not too straight to the point story on the whole album.
I'll be honest, this is maybe the one song on the album that I can barely remember. It didn't stick with me at all. This song.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think chorus-wise it sticks to me the most, but in terms of maybe the story, I can tell that there's like a flood, and I think the vape owner and some other guy needs to like work together to gather the town or something like that. I really wish I had more to say about this track, but I will definitely still be playing this mainly for the tune itself. And I don't think it fails in any regard lyrically. I just think that the story isn't as relatable as the others for me.
And it's not as sharp, snappy, and sticky.
Exactly,
as
like the other
ones
tracks.
Yeah.
And speaking of sharp and sticky, the next track that comes after that, Two Halves, I feel like you'd want to say something about that before I say anything.
This track is beautiful. Like making a song about soccer is a big bait for me, but like this absolutely is worth eating the bait from the hook. This song is hilarious and highly relatable.
Definitely. Like, were you part of a little league?
Oh. Not like a little league per se, but I played soccer pretty much all through school. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, like, pretty much the premise of the song is literally a little league soccer game, and this kid's playing, and his dad is like, what, either the coach or he's just watching.
He's just yelling at him from the sidelines.
Yeah, from the sidelines. And you feel for the kid.
Yeah.
You're like, shit. Because I played Little League Soccer, but my dad didn't really care. Like, I mean, he would come to the games, but he wasn't really hard on me. I had my brother as a coach when I was playing basketball in high school, and then I felt like that was a lot of pressure because he had a lot of expectations for me. And having that expectations when you're playing a fun game is tough because you want to be the best, yet you end up feeling, like you failed.
And the thing is, sometimes you are going to be the worst person on the team, and that's what I mean. Not saying the character in the story is the worst player in the team, but he's having a shocker.
Or he definitely, from what Richard Dawson really specifically describes in the song, oh shit, this guy is, not playing too well.
Well, when I first heard the song, I actually didn't instantly click it was a song about football.
Yeah.
Like, even reading the track name, Two Halves is obviously a song, it makes sense. But when I was listening to it, it didn't click until I heard the line about Leo Messi.
Yeah.
That's when it snapped in my head. Like, oh, he's talking about playing football. And then, oh, he sucks.
Yeah, you're not Lionel Messi, just pass the bloody ball is such a hilarious line. And I think the hook is so damn catchy. It's an earworm. It's an absolute earworm, mate. And does it remind you of anything? It reminds me of some kind of alternative rock band / song, but I cannot
It's almost got a little bit of arcade fire to it, the way it's just like building up like... just two words, you're holding on to them for the whole chorus, yeah.
Yeah, is there any kind of lyric in that song that really stands out to you? I know for me, it's when that game finishes and he's like, the final whistle blows, I am inconsolable. Yeah. I reckon Dad is really disappointed in me. I'm like, oh shit, man.
Well, even following on from there, my favourite line's probably right at the very end, the last line. And the dad, he's in the car with his dad, and I can't remember the exact line, but it's like, oh, do you want Chinese or fish and chips?
It's the way Richard Dawson says it. It's so fucking goofy. It's like, fish and chips.
He does that a lot. He'll hold a line, because he can't, I don't know, he'll hold something ridiculous and drag it out.
Yeah, he does it on, which we're going to talk about soon, Fulfillment Center, when he's listing all the products and he goes, extension leads.
It works for him though.
No, I actually like it. I wait for that line and I'm like, oh, this is so great. The next track after that, which is another favorite of mine, so Two Halves and Jogging were the singles of the album. Yeah. Do you feel like they would sound like singles?
I think they do. They're definitely both standout songs, and they're both super catchy.
Yeah. Were you trying to predict which songs were the singles, or did that kind of just escape your head?
Listening to Jogging, I think Jogging instantly stands out as a single.
Yeah.
Two Halves, I wouldn't have actually occurred to me that was a single, but good for it.
For Jogging, if you can guess the music video concept for Jogging, what would it be?
Him jogging.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it. Ding, 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 man. Like 100%. It's literally just him jogging around his town.
I'm guessing he's probably not in good shape either.
No. I mean, no hate to Richard Dawson, but it is him jogging. And he's just like this chubby guy just having a jog.
Yeah, I imagine he's not happy doing it either from the context of the song.
No, I mean... It seems like it gives him a bit of a clear head, just the way he talks about it, but he's still really fixating on the shittiness of life, you know what I mean? Especially towards the end. But I find this concept of a song so interesting. Just the way that, you find out so much about his fears, his desires, his passions throughout this whole song. You really get to know this character so well. And I think that's just so great and interesting. Just the minute he opens with, recently I've been suffering from anxiety. You're like, shit, man, tell us your story. Tell us how it is. And I just think it carries on and it really just goes into what he's been feeling and how hard his life has been feeling and how he's trying to deal with these terrible feelings that he's experiencing. What do you kind of think of this track?
Well, the song reminded me of was like early Courtney Barnett kind of stuff, going to just tell a very personal story or some like cheeky, quirky anecdotes. But it really is the song that starts to highlight his struggle.
I like the rhythm. The dun 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 dun. What rhythm is that?
No, it reminded me of Kate Bush running up that hill.
Yeah, yes.
Like that's what stuck for me when I first heard it. The drums, I don't know, it sounds exactly like it almost. And it makes sense of the songs like running and jogging. I don't know.
Exactly. That's a good little connection. in terms of this track, he ends up talking about the stuff that makes him really anxious, and I thought those were the funniest parts of the song.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, something about this busker sneaking an ugly word,
We're talking about going outside making him anxious right at the start, right?
Yeah, just going outside. He's like looking at houses at Zoopla and where he's never gonna live in his life, and he can't even leave the flat. That's how anxious he is. So even just jogging is such a big thing for him. And no, but there's small things that he talks about, like the shop clerk tucks something under her mouth and it destroys him for a week.
It ruins the rest of his life.
Or what I was trying to get to is some guy says sneaks an ugly word to Wonderwall. And I just thought that line was really weird. I don't really understand it.
And that's one of those lines that, if you're actually just listening to the song, you can barely tell who's actually saying that. Like, I was reading through the lyrics, that's the only time I picked up he said that. But I guess in the context of Wonderwall as a song, the most overplayed busking song in the entire world, I can't blame a man for slipping in a dirty word into that.
Yeah, so I think it is great single material, and it was one of those songs. That and Two Halves really got me so excited. Because I knew Richard Dawson, I heard Peasant. I didn't really go back to it, but I felt like he might be hitting the mark with this one. And I think he did. The next track, Heart Emoji, do you have much to say about this song?
Yeah, this is the song where you start to realize he's kind of pathetic. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this character is pathetic.
Yeah. It's you sympathize with him up to this point, and then by here you're like, oh, this guy's actually kind of ridiculous.
Just to break this up a bit, do you kind of connect this to one person, or do you connect this to just a bunch of people in England?
For me, when I listened to the album, I kind of took it as one person's long story.
That's interesting as fuck. That's
how I felt it.
I've never seen it like that, and no one ever talks to it like that. He's making like character portrayals of different characters.
Right. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
So, like, it is. I just assumed it was like vignettes of his life. Or
I mean, I feel like
life.
there is a chance that it could be.
Yeah.
Because I do think these songs are not too far apart from each other. You know, like there isn't a weird timeline that makes it, this can't make sense. He must be going through a lot of jobs. That's the only thing. He must experience a lot of jobs.
From the way he talks about his jobs, it makes sense.
yeah, exactly. Like, he's not a happy individual.
Yeah.
For Heart Emoji, what do you think he comes off as pathetic?
Well, he's going around and he's reading her texts and then he wants to kill her. I mean...
Yeah,
he sees her phone light up and his first instinct is like, oh, what's happening? I better go investigate this.
Yeah, he does seem like a scumbag, eh? And I think the ending of that song is so weird.
But it sums up the patheticness. He stands on a slug, right? That's what happens, and it's so human and shitty. At the end of the day, it's like, fuck, does it even matter? I stepped on a bloody slug.
No, but he's so sad that he's just stepped on a slug. Yet he's just about to kill his ex-girlfriend. That's fucked up.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. That song it's probably the darkest song of the album.
It did come off as pathetic, but I felt like it also came off as just how destructive this person is when it comes to relationships. So it kind of does show that side of a person that doesn't know how to handle breakups and whatnot. It is a weird track, and I like how weird the ending is.
So in your mind, you've detached the story from all the other stories in the album. I felt like it almost directly goes into some of the other tracks coming up.
I think the music, listening to it, my mind kind of drifts and thinks about it connected, but then I also think it can't be. Like, no one has that much different jobs and has been through very many different relationships and heartbreak, but then thinking about it as well, it kind of makes sense that would be the stages of his life. Whether it's, chronological or whatever.
Well, it's definitely not chronological.
Oh, yeah, because of the government work and then going into him being as a kid, yeah. But yeah, Heart Emoji, I think the melody is so nice. I like the folky instrumental, and I like how weird the ending is. It's weird. It makes me kind of disgusted.
It's surreal.
It's very surreal, yeah. Especially when the slug's introduced and you're like, what? Is this how you're going to end it? This is crazy. The next track, Black Triangle, it's a big one. That's the one with the UFO discovery. What did you think about that?
See, for me, this song, I looked at it as a continuation from the previous song. He starts talking about this UFO experience that he saw with his mate in his 20s, right?
Yeah.
And then they both went their own ways. He dives into this UFO, what you call like YouTube kind of
Yeah.
analysis, almost not a career but lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then his mate goes and becomes what is like a real estate broker or something like that. I can't remember. So, some white collar job. And then they go their own ways, and then it pulls it back to the relationship drama in the second half of the story.
Because he didn't end up killing her in the last track.
No.
No, he stepped on the slug and he's like, oh shit.
Yeah, and then he talks about this woman, or a woman, just going and finding some nice guy called Rob.
Yeah.
And that's what I put those two stories together, because I thought he was just leaving that story of heart emoji behind. And I was really like, I'm not relieved, but like stoked to hear it come back up again after this little vignette of another person who left him in his life. And then he pulls it back into his wife who left him.
I love the way he links his friend's relationship, and then right after he talks about his friend's relationship and his successful life, he goes straight to, my marriage has been falling apart. she's leaving me for a guy named Rob at her Pilates class or some shit.
But he's still like, yeah, he's a really nice guy.
Yeah. I think it's really sweet how he's like, his daughter, he's glad that his daughter is too young to realize what's happening. Yeah. And then he's like at a tent with her and they're discovering UFOs. The instrumental on this is so kind of funny. It just reminds me of like hair metal bands. You know what I mean? Especially those like screeches he does during the instrumental breaks. It just reminds me of like an 80s Twisted Sister song or something like that.
It's interesting because like, yeah, the instrumental is not something that stuck with me for the song. I can remember the story of it throughout, but I can't remember the instrumental almost at all.
Honestly, go back, man, because it is some Twisted Sister, like 80s Motley Crue hair metal epicness. It's really interesting. And it's got some like spacey instrumental breaks to kind of like make things interesting and stretch it out to, 7 minutes?
It's quite a long song.
Yeah, but not as long as the next track, Fulfillment Center, which is bleak.
It's bleak. It's a standout moment.
I think it's definitely a standout moment for its bleakness.
Yeah.
What did you get out of that song?
I loved the song.
Yeah.
What it weirdly reminded me of is not even another song or like piece of music, but it reminded me of like the book Brave New World. Like the way that they've got these like echoing voices throughout the fulfillment center trying to, like, I don't know, indoctrinate all their employees. It's very similar to in Brave New World, where they've got, in the future when they're brainwashing these children with these loud words blasted out. And that's the vibe I got from it. It was really disturbing, really dystopian.
I feel like I'm in the fulfillment center when I'm listening to it. All those weird, robotic, futuristic noises and just the way he's listing all these products, it just exemplifies how bleak his job life is, or his whole life, because it's taking over his whole life. And the whole line about him having to pee in a bottle because they don't let him take toilet breaks.
Can't waste time, yeah.
That's fucked.
It's dire. And
did you ever work in a place like that?
Nah,
or something remotely similar?
I've never worked something that grueling. No.
Yeah. It's so like heartbreaking, and especially when he talks about how he's trying to take leave, but they need him for the holidays. He can't leave until the new year to visit his family.
Yeah.
That's so heartbreaking. Yeah, it's just everything about it, and just the way the song ends. What did you think about the chorus? Because it comes maybe like twice or three times, and it's such a euphoric sound, I think.
Can you remind me how the chorus goes?
It goes like, there's nothing left of me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a great chorus. That was definitely a highlight. And there's also the breakdown in the middle of the song.
That's really all those futuristic sounds.
It reminded me of like Radiohead, to be honest.
Yeah,
the whole
definitely.
song kind of reminds me of Radiohead, but it's super like drony and links together, and it works based on the way the song is about a super like digital era issue. It's not something that would have happened 100 years ago. I mean, you still had wage slaves in the factories, but like now it's people who are chained in to help other people's like late stage capitalism needs, and that's what this is about.
The little section in the song where he's talking about his employees, this is like such an interesting part of the track where he's talking about employees that he used to work with that couldn't handle the job.
Oh, yes. And there's a person who was standing up and they fell asleep.
Yeah,
They,
like a high school kid who
Yeah.
like wanted like to make extra money for the holidays, and he fell asleep during the job, and
there
so they
was
sent him
was
out.
it like a foreign employee who just like started yelling in their language and no one knew what was happening, but they never showed up again. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was one like a middle-aged lady who like started frothing from the mouth.
Yeah.
That's like fuck.
Is the song directly about Amazon?
Probably. If they're talking about fulfillment center, Amazon makes the most sense.
Yeah, okay.
It's like an Amazon kind of job. You know what I mean? The way all those bleak descriptions happen in the song, and it ends with such an amazing lyric on the last chorus that says, "There must be more to killing yourself to survive," and I'm like, shit.
Well, the last chorus it's like stretched out, right? So it's doubly as long as all the other choruses.
No.
He's like reached the point where he's just absolutely done. It's over.
That's so true, yes. And then he says he's just going to start a cafe one day.
Yeah. Which is something you hear quite a lot.
Yeah, kind of like, it's just like, one day I'll run my own cafe.
Yep.
And I hope he does.
I hope he does. I mean, hopefully this record gives him the money to.
Exactly, man. And then the next track, which is a personal favorite of mine, which was my least favorite at first when I first heard it twice. When I ran through the record the first 2 times, I was like, oh, I'm not too into this song. And now, as one of the most heartwarming, touching moments of the record, it's Freshers Ball. Do you recall the themes and the story of this track?
So from what I remember, he's driving his either daughter or son. I can't remember.
I think it's a daughter.
Daughter, dropping her off at university for the first time.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to let her go, and then he gets home and he's just basically in a state of ennui and he has no idea what's happening. He's like, I think he says he watches Match of the Day and spies on a hedgehog outside.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that kind of gives him comfort. But he goes to sleep, and he has like this dream of him and his daughter like running away from like a minotaur, which I thought was pronounced minotaur. I don't know what's right anymore.
I think it is Minotaur, to be honest.
English people.
Yeah. Speaking the Queen's English,
Yeah.
you can't even do it right.
But I thought that was so interesting. And then he wakes up, and do you know what five-a-side is? I think it's a
Yeah, it's
football
football.
thing.
It's just casual football on a Wednesday, five-a-side.
Yeah. So he's just
But like, if you're living like a shitty life, that's the kind of thing you look forward to. That's what like your week is based around your five-a-side game. And imagine if you lost that.
Bro, it's heartwarming, but it's also so sad because you can tell this guy is like just a sad single father, and the fact that he's letting his daughter go is like breaking him,
But he does. I feel like he accepts it in the end.
He does, yeah. I think with the hedgehog was that kind of acceptance,
Yeah.
like this is where I am, and I can just imagine he lives in this shitty flat, He's living in the shitty flat and he's just missing his daughter.
Well, like songs like this are why I assumed the album was one story, because it's a continuation of the heart emoji story and the
And then Black Triangle.
story where he's by himself now. I mean, he's got custody of the kid, I assume at this point,
Yeah.
and now she's gone as well. So who's
Fuck.
left? That's the idea I got from it.
You're flipping my mind, bro. Straight up. That's actually so, because I always kind of thought about that, but I never thought about the daughter being the daughter from Black Triangle, you know what I mean?
I think for me, when I listen to an album, especially of this like singer-songwriter style, if they're saying I just assume it's the one protagonist throughout,
Yeah. Because there's never a name for these different characters. There's a name for the people in his life,
Yeah.
but there's never a name for him.
So if I thought they were different people, I would assume they'd go into third person.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty believable. That's such an interesting take, I think, on that. And Freshers Ball, I feel like you explained it really well, and I just love the little discussion we had about how he's just a sad single father.
He's broken
He's
at this
just
point,
who's really upset to have his daughter go. And I think the line about him calling her at a coffee shop and just being like, hope you're doing okay.
She's like, I'm good.
She's like, man, I just like,
That's so highly relatable, though. Like,
Yeah.
you go off on your adventures in your universities and whatnot.
And I like
And
I like that the song is called Freshers Ball, which I think in England it's like this big party ball that happens in universities, and that's probably the fear in his mind. That's probably what he's thinking about.
Yeah, it didn't click for me what the name was, to be honest. Yeah.
The fact that the song's called Freshers Ball, he's probably thinking,
Yeah.
my daughter's gonna go to these balls and meet new people and
Never talk to me again.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to mention earlier. Like you go away, but your parents still they're still so invested in your life, and they still want to know everything that's happening, that you're all good. And so what's happening to Richard Dawson here is he's had the only thing that's going right from his life, his daughter move away, and now she's like, no, I'm good, Dad. I don't even need to talk. Don't worry about it. It hurts.
Rough. If the stories are connected, she was probably the only person who believed in his UFO discoveries.
Hey, he had a YouTube channel, man.
True.
There are people out there. There's always people out there.
I wonder who watched this guy's YouTube channel about UFO discoveries. Have you ever like dived into YouTube discovery? I was like conspiracy videos and shit.
I don't relate to conspiracy
No, this
theories
shit's
at
so
all.
dumb,
Man.
but
It's so
for the laugh
far-fetched.
though, bro.
Yeah, I mean it's funny, but then it's so sad. You're just like laughing at people who have dedicated their life to something that's so far-fetched.
My family used to watch like Illuminati videos and shit. And it would always be some like real nerdy ass guy like Illuminati. Like, the Illuminati cards. It means this. I'm like, fuck up.
Well, it's because I think with conspiracy theories in general, it's people, they want to feel smarter than everyone else. They want to feel like they know something that you don't know. So they'll latch on to these crazy ideas.
Yeah. And I think it's bullshit.
Yeah. I mean,
to be frank.
I mean, of course, some things are going to be, like, have roots in reality, but then there's things like the moon isn't real, which are a bit far-fetched.
Or like anti-vax shit. And the next track, which is a fantastic closer. Honestly, the more I talk about it, the more I'm feeling a bit more sure that this might be my album of the year.
Well, there is a little track in between them, right?
So pretty much they're thinking that, and Richard Dawson has like mildly confirmed that Peasant, his album in 2016, this album, they're all going to be part of like a trilogy.
Okay.
So Peasant and this album are kind of connected because they deal with stories.
So Peasant is, as you were saying, is it like it told from a historical perspective?
Yeah,
And
like
this
a
is
medieval perspective.
And this is like the 2020 life.
Yeah, like the current now.
Yeah.
And the trilogy might lead to a futuristic...
Oh, yeah. If we're basing it off Fulfillment Center as like an almost dystopian song, if he goes like full into the future thing...
Full produced by Sophie. Full on,
I'm
like...
down. Oh, Sophie producing would be so exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, and then so that's why that kind of track No One is like just weird quietness for like 40 seconds.
Well,
and the same thing is on Peasant as well. So I don't know if it's this kind of quirky connection.
I think what I got from it was, it's as he's saying, he's super lonely, quiet in his house. There's no one. The song's called No One. He's just 40 seconds of just taking it in.
Yeah.
Just like oh shit.
But then so if we're connecting this to one person, are we gonna deal with the fact that this ending of his life or this ending of his story that we know of is him being homeless?
I got a completely different take from that last song.
Fuck off. How?
I thought he was just... So the song's Dead Dog in the Alleyway,
The
right?
dog in an alleyway, yeah.
What I got from it was that he's got to this point in his life where he's just in despair, right?
Yeah.
And so he's just like drunk off his face. He's walked down to the pub and just got absolutely blitzed, and he's outside stumbling around, and he just wants to get home. And people are just walking past laughing at this like drunk piece of shit. And they're like, not spitting on him per se, but you know, like smirking at him. And he's just, I just want to go home, but he's just absolutely devastated, like falling in the garbage bin, basically. That's the impression I got from it.
Fuck. Okay, I understand that. Like, if you connect that to his other stories, the way he's, like, say when he goes to the Nando's, or he's outside the Nando's, and he hears, like, the families talking, and when the door opens every time, he can hear, like, a little bit of the muttering of the kids and all that kind of stuff. And... that's him maybe reflecting on his life or his, previous life. But the way he talks about the city as the neon something. It just reminds me of someone who's, homeless. He's like, he's a dead dog in an alleyway. He doesn't have any place to live. It's a drastic shift if we're connecting this to one character, but I don't know. I guess that's what made sense to me, but it could just be a terrible night for him.
Well, it is in itself. It's one of the most abstract songs in the album. Like, it's not a concise vignette of a story like a lot of the other ones are. It's a lot of jumping around, what's happening. And, like, going back to Nando's, like, Nando's in England is where you go after, like, you've had your drinks. You go to Nando's, have some spicy burgers. I don't know. That's just the impression I got from it, but I can see how it's a bit far-fetched.
Yeah, I guess thinking about what he's talking about in the song, and how he's, he's getting a lot of shit from the football players. They give him the most shit, which is another thing I could probably link to back to his childhood as well. Which it might actually be this tie-up of all the tracks that came before it. I guess I just want to go for the tragic, sad, human portrayal and think that this guy is homeless. He's reached a point of his life now that he's homeless, and he's sleeping in an alleyway, and he's kind of just reflecting on, his maybe his past life and the things that made him happy, like Nando's.
So you think he's dying, right?
I don't know if he's dying. No, I don't think he's dying.
Okay.
That would be pretty dark and extreme. The song's, even though it is probably, maybe you're right, the most abstract, man, the catchiness is it's so catchy. It's got such a lovely hook, and the jangly instrumental, the vocals, the choir vocals in the background, I wish it didn't end in a fade, but other than that, it's definitely like a 5-star song to me.
It is a great song.
Yeah, and just thinking about whether it is connected or whether these are just separate stories, and now we're looking at a homeless man in England, it still really drives home. And
it is sort of the missing piece from the album up till then. You've had a guy, he's still kind of got it together the entire time. Like, it's not going well for him, everything's kind of shitty, but at least he's got a job, or at least he's got a daughter who's got a life going forward for him.
Yeah, exactly.
And in this story, there's really nothing.
Exactly, man. Other than him just observing the little bits of goodness in life that he found, like hearing the chattering in a Nando's, or just being in this lovely neon tunnel. If that's actually what it is, I don't know. It is very interesting, and it does make me think about people who do live a long life and have lived a lot of things and experienced a lot, yet they end up in nothingness at the end.
It only takes like 2 things to go wrong in your life in quick succession.
Exactly, because we never look at homeless people, or say someone who's like making a fool out of himself drunk on the side of the curb, and think, this person did this and that in his life. We kind of just think, this is where he's at, this is how I'm taking this person at face value. And it's pretty sad.
It is sad, yeah.
It's pretty damn.
Him at his most tragic.
Oh, without a doubt, mate. Without a doubt. Now, I'm just going back into my notes. We kind of did like a little track-by-track thing. That was a lot of fun to do. It made me really think about the songs more than I, ever did while listening to it. Do you have did you find the musical experience challenging in any way?
The most challenging part is probably getting into the vocals.
Yeah, I think so as well.
I do like them, but they're different, and especially the accent. The accent is very thick, but I think it adds to the storytelling.
I think it also adds to the charm.
Definitely.
It does make it quite a charming experience. It's got that English charm, and I still kind of relate it to like selling England by the pound, like Genesis era, like Peter Gabriel. It has this real British charm, and it kind of just creates a nice little semi-autobiography on like England life.
Also, some of those stories are quintessentially British. Like
yeah.
two halves is. I mean, you have a New Zealand or an American version of that story, but like the way it's told is so British.
Yeah, Queen's Head I think is pretty British, very British as well, and just some of the stories told on Fisher's Ball I found really British as well. Just the way he's having this real like abstract life, and he's kind of in this drought, and the way he explains his daughter going to university I think is quite British as well.
Well, despite its Britishness, every story is highly relatable to most people.
Exactly, yeah. It doesn't take me out of it. I don't think. Now, what do you think overall thoughts on like the production?
I think it's actually a beautiful sounding album.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily the highlight of the album, but it never lets it down at any
Exactly, yeah. Exactly, because of course it is going to be overshadowed by its lyrical density and everything, but the production is so enjoyable, and there's nothing that sounds unpleasant to me, in my opinion. And lyrically, I feel like we've kind of went over it.
It's a lyrical masterclass. Right?
Yeah, definitely lyrical masterclass. And probably my favorite thing to listen to in 2019. And concept, man, I'm glad that you were here to kind of like nail down the concept in other interesting ways, because I like listening to music and not kind of taking it at face value what everyone else is saying. I like when people bring in new things and new ideas.
It's so weird. I assumed.
Yeah, you just assumed it. But not every person who talks about this, they talk about it as character portrayals.
Okay, yeah.
Different characters.
Yeah.
And even though I still kind of stick to that they are different characters, they may as well just be one person, because we're all basic bitches. We're all kind of the same, you know? We all have similar experiences.
Even now that you've mentioned to me that it's possibly different vignettes, I'm still like not going to be able to listen to it in that way.
Yeah.
Like it's still going to, for me, be a full first-person narrative told in these little stories, but these stories of his life, or at least of these characters' life.
I guess I kind of look at it as one person now, and I feel like I want to really focus on trying to listen to it as that being one person. But I'm always going to find these stories so different from one another, to the point where he was just transformed to someone else in these stories. But at the end, this is his fate. Kind of thing.
I guess because I was going into it thinking it was one person, like listening to it thinking it's one person, I've molded these stories into a way that it adds up as one person. Whereas if I went in thinking they're all different people, then you'd be looking at it that way from the get-go, and you would separate them. You would find the dissimilar parts rather than similarities.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's such a great take. And now, have favorite tracks? Maybe like a big 3 or a big 5?
It's definitely a big 3. The Two Halves, probably my favorite track on the album.
Yeah.
And then right after it, Jogging it's hilarious and heartfelt. And then Fulfillment Center is just like it's the big epic of the album, and I think it really earns its place.
Okay, I'm gonna try to do one without naming all the tracks. Big 5 for me would be Jogging, Two Halves, Fulfillment Center, Fresh as Ball, Dead Dog in an Alleyway. Yeah, I think that sounds about right for me. Least favorite track?
Yeah, the Queen's Head, as I mentioned earlier, it's like it's not that I dislike it, it's just forgettable for me. I like it to this point. I still can't remember what happens in the song.
Yeah, and for me, it'll probably be Queen's Head.
And it's a shame that it's the second song on the album as well. Yeah.
Also, for fans of final thoughts kind of thing.
For me, if you like Courtney Barnett, it's definitely up that kind of same storytelling, working class.
A bit harsher than Courtney Barnett's music though. Like,
yeah, a little. Yeah, it's a bit darker, but she also has her moments as well.
Yeah.
Like she has a song Depressed in her not her last album, but before that, when she's going through this little shitty town in like middle Australia, and they're looking at this house there, and this house used to be owned by like a grandma, and the grandma's gone, but all her shit's still there, and they're like trying to buy this house, but this entire town's got nothing going for it. That kind of struggle that I don't know that kind of feel is kind of encapsulated in this as well.
And but vocally, I think it would be a bit harder for you to get into like a Richard Dawson voice than, of course, Courtney Barnett.
Courtney Barnett's interesting because she's. While the voice isn't crazy to us as New Zealanders, but like that Australian accent's pretty thick. It could be pretty rough if you're like a British person trying to listen to that.
I love hearing Americans talk about Kieran J. Callanan and stuff like that. Oh, Alex Cameron. Alex Cameron isn't as Aussie, but Kieran J. Callanan's voice is so Aussie. And that could be really, really daunting for a lot of listeners because it's such a thick accent.
I still find that with New Zealand artists a lot of the time. Like I struggle, man. I genuinely struggle if it's too thick.
And we're surrounded by it like all the time. That's hilarious.
And like the thing is, the New Zealand accent and the Australian accent lends itself to like sarcastic or irreverent music, which I think works for a lot of the artists you mentioned and for Courtney Barnett because they're not like 100% taken seriously, Whereas I don't know, not the same thing can be said for American artists. Yeah.
And in terms of like numerical ratings, do you go by those?
I do.
When it comes to like wrapping up your final thoughts?
That's the album I struggle to put a number on because it's very much a narrative, or like a bunch of narratives potentially more than it is like a piece of music almost. But my initial thoughts are probably like leaning towards an 8. Yeah.
Nice. Mine is definitely like a real decent 9. Yeah, I'm quite in love with this record, and it hasn't really grown off me or made me bored in any certain way. It's such a joy to listen to, and I know I can imagine myself listening to this in like 5-10 years and still feeling the same emotions and connection to the songs and the stories in the same way that I did when I first heard them. So I'm really excited for that. Would you recommend them to people? Would
Yeah,
you?
definitely. If you're into like the little charming kind of album, the song has a story
Yeah.
to it, then 100%.
Because I know when I play this album around people, it's a bit weird, and it usually vocally it's a bit weird, and that's why people are a bit like, oh, I don't know about this guy's vocals and the way he sounds and the way he stretches words and the way he's always fitting words into like a certain bar. It's really interesting, but it is a bit jarring.
Well, I mean, it's not something you'd put on at a dinner party, but
Yeah.
it's very much like a solo listening album. I also I'm not quite sure what a Richard Dawson gig would look like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go to one. Though.
I don't know if I'd want to go to that experience because these are all like such personal stories, and they're something that like are interwoven so well together that like if you're putting it in an album context, if it's outside of if you're putting it in a concert context outside of an album, I don't know how it would flow.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that would be weird.
Yeah.
I don't think it would subtract the experience, but I think it would be like, this is not how I'm used to listening to this guy's music. Yeah, thank you so much, Alan.
No worries.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. It was really great to talk about this album and kind of get new perspectives on this piece of work. Thank you.
Cheers.